Planning and preparation, early 1943. Planning and preparation for the Battle of Sicily, or Operation Husky, began in earnest in early 1943, after the successful conclusion of the North African Campaign, which had seen the Allies push the Axis powers out of North Africa. The Allies' decision to target Sicily was based on several factors. Sicily was the closest European landmass to Africa, where the Allied forces were based. It also offered a strategic location for launching further operations into Europe, particularly into Italy, and for tightening the naval blockade against the Axis. Furthermore, a successful invasion of Sicily was seen as a potential blow to Italian morale that could knock Italy out of the war. This decision was finalized at the Casablanca Conference in January 1943, attended by President Franklin D. Roosevelt of the United States and Prime Minister Winston Churchill of the United Kingdom, along with their senior military advisors. The preparation for the operation involved immense logistical organization. The Allies had to accumulate sufficient landing craft, ships, and other equipment necessary for such a large-scale amphibious assault. They also undertook a significant intelligence-gathering effort, which involved spies, reconnaissance flights, and the interception of enemy communications. Meanwhile, the Allies also conducted a deception campaign known as Operation Mincemeat to mislead the Axis about their invasion plans. This operation involved the British releasing false information indicating that Greece and Sardinia were the targets for the next Allied move. The American General Dwight D. Eisenhower was appointed as the supreme commander of Operation Husky, with British General Harold Alexander as his deputy. The British 8th Army, under General Bernard Montgomery, and the American 7th Army, under General George S. Patton, were chosen for the invasion force. Initial landings, July 10, 1943. The initial landings of Operation Husky, the invasion of Sicily, began on the night of July 9th and early morning of July 10, 1943. The operation was one of the largest combined operations of World War II, involving land, sea, and air forces. The invasion was launched from the south, with the Allies targeting the southern coast of Sicily. The operation began with airborne landings by both American and British paratroopers, designed to secure key bridges and crossroads ahead of the main assault. However, due to a variety of problems including navigational errors and unexpected wind conditions, many of the airborne forces were scattered and landed far from their intended zones, resulting in confusion and disorganization. Despite these issues, they were able to cause some disruption to Axis forces. Following the airborne landings, the main amphibious assault began. The U.S. 7th Army, under the command of General George S. Patton, landed on the western side of the island, with their primary landing zones near the towns of Licata, Gela, and Skogliti. The British 8th Army, led by General Bernard Montgomery, targeted the eastern side of the island, conducting their main landings near Pachino, Syracuse, and Augusta. The Allies had expected strong resistance, but in many areas, they met with less initial opposition than anticipated. Much of the Italian coastal defense was poorly coordinated and ill-prepared to respond effectively to the scale of the Allied invasion. In fact, the most significant challenges came from the natural conditions, including rough seas rather than enemy forces. This allowed the Allies to establish their beachheads and begin their advance into Sicily. In the following days, the Americans pushed towards the west and north, while the British forces aimed to secure the east of the island. Despite the relative success of the landings, the battle for Sicily was only just beginning. The Allies now faced the task of driving Axis forces from the island in the face of growing resistance. Battle for the Airfields, July 1943. The control of airfields was a crucial strategic objective in the Battle of Sicily due to the importance of air superiority in World War II. Both the Allies and the Axis powers recognized that air power could significantly influence the course of the ground campaign by providing support to their own ground forces and hindering the movements and operations of the enemy. After establishing their initial beachheads, the Allies sought to rapidly capture Sicilian airfields. This would not only deprive the Axis of a significant resource, but would also allow the Allies to bring in their own aircraft to support the ongoing campaign. Control of these airfields would also make resupply and reinforcement operations easier. In the west, the U.S. 7th Army aimed at the airfields around the capital, Palermo. In the east, the British 8th Army moved towards the airfields near Catania, one of the main objectives of the British due to its airfields and proximity to the Italian mainland. The Axis forces put up stiff resistance, especially near the strategic area of Catania. The German forces utilized a strategy of planned withdrawal, slowing down the British advance with a series of defensive lines and counterattacks. This fierce resistance around the Catania area made progress difficult and slow for the British. On the other hand, the Americans faced less resistance as they moved through western Sicily. They were able to secure the airfield at Ponte Olivo, just north of Gela, by July 12th, and later the airfields near Palermo. In conclusion, the battle for the airfields throughout July 1943 saw both sides appreciating the strategic importance of air superiority. The Allies, while meeting variable resistance, were successful in securing several key airfields which helped them maintain momentum in the broader Sicilian campaign. Battle for Central Sicily and Catania, mid-July 1943. After the initial landings and securing of the beachheads, the next phase of the campaign was the move into Central Sicily and towards the city of Catania. This stage of the Battle of Sicily took place in mid-July 1943. After capturing key airfields and coastal areas, the U.S. 7th Army under General George S. Patton pushed north and then east towards the central part of Sicily. The American forces aimed to take the city of Palermo to the northwest and then to cut east across the northern coast of Sicily to trap Axis forces in the northeast corner of the island. Simultaneously, the British 8th Army under General Bernard Montgomery made a drive towards Catania on the eastern coast of Sicily, aiming to capture its important airfields and seaport. Catania was heavily fortified, and the German and Italian forces offered stiff resistance, slowing down the British advance significantly. The fight for Catania was marked by intense combat, including the Battle of Primosole Bridge, where the British paratroopers faced strong opposition. In the central highlands of Sicily, the American and British forces encountered challenging terrain and fierce resistance from the German forces. The Germans skillfully used the mountainous terrain for a series of delaying actions, slowing the Allied advance. Despite these challenges, by the end of July, the British had managed to encircle Catania. The capture of these cities was crucial as it provided the Allies with strategic bases for launching further operations. The battle for Central Sicily and Catania highlighted the resolve of the Axis to defend the island and the strategic importance the Allies placed on controlling Sicily. Fall of Palermo and Messina, late July, mid-August 1943. The final stages of the Battle of Sicily focused on the two major cities of Palermo and Messina. American forces advanced on Palermo, the capital of Sicily, situated on the northwestern coast of the island. Despite some resistance, the U.S. 7th Army, under General George S. Patton, successfully entered and captured Palermo on July 22, 1943. The capture of Palermo provided the Allies with a significant port and airfield facilities, which greatly helped their logistic support. It also boosted the morale of the Allies and served as a blow to the Axis. After the fall of Palermo, both the U.S. and British forces pushed towards the northeastern city of Messina, the final Axis stronghold on Sicily. This strategic port city was important because its capture would signify total Allied control of the island. Messina is also only a few kilometers from the Italian mainland, separated by the Strait of Messina. The race to Messina turned out to be a challenging task for the Allies, due to stiff German resistance and the difficult terrain of northeastern Sicily. The Germans, under Field Marshal Albert Kesselring, staged a skillful delaying action, using the mountainous terrain to slow down the Allied advance while they evacuated their forces to the Italian mainland. On August 17, 1943, Patton's American forces entered Messina, followed shortly after by Montgomery's British forces. However, by the time the Allies captured Messina, the Germans and Italians had successfully evacuated the majority of their troops and equipment to the mainland. This was a significant achievement for the Axis, despite the loss of Sicily. In conclusion, the fall of Palermo and Messina marked the end of the Battle of Sicily. These victories provided the Allies with a significant strategic and morale boost, but the successful evacuation of Axis troops meant they would have to be faced again on the Italian mainland. Aftermath, post-August 1943. The Battle of Sicily marked a crucial turning point in World War II and had profound implications for the course of the conflict. As the dust settled on the island following the hard-fought Allied victory, the consequences began to unfold. The immediate and perhaps the most dramatic aftermath was felt in Italy's political corridors. The loss of Sicily dealt a severe blow to Benito Mussolini's regime. Just a few days after the fall of Palermo, Mussolini was arrested, and the fascist government collapsed on July 25th. Marshal Pietro Badoglio took over the reins of the new government and began secret negotiations with the Allies. These negotiations led to an armistice signed on September 3, 1943, which effectively flipped Italy from being a member of the Axis to a co-belligerent of the Allies against Germany. While the political machinations were playing out, the successful campaign in Sicily provided a launching pad for the Allies' next significant move, the invasion of the Italian mainland. On September 3, 1943, the British Eighth Army crossed the Strait of Messina and landed in Calabria, marking the first step in what would turn out to be a protracted and bloody Italian campaign. A few days later, on September 9th, the U.S. Fifth Army landed at Salerno, further intensifying the Allied push. The Italian campaign continued to be a major theater of war until the final collapse of the Nazi regime in May 1945. Operation Husky's success also forced the Germans to divert substantial resources to Italy. These were resources that could have otherwise been utilized on other fronts, such as in the titanic struggle on the Eastern Front against the Soviet Union, or in bolstering defenses against the anticipated Allied invasion of Western Europe. Thus, the campaign had significant implications for the broader strategic balance during the war. Lastly, the Sicilian campaign was also a learning experience for the Allies. The lessons learned about planning and executing a large amphibious invasion and the close cooperation between the air, land, and naval forces were put to good use in subsequent operations, most notably the D-Day invasion in June 1944.